Well, hello and welcome to another roundtable discussion here for the Concours Virtual. This is a fun class to talk about. This is Isolation Island Concours. And as I will explain in a minute, I've got the perfect people to talk about that. But allow me to introduce myself first. My name is Richard Charlesworth, and if you haven't bumped into me at a classic event, you may have heard me over the PA as Master of Ceremonies for the Quail, a motorsports gathering, as a curator and joint presenter of the Concours of Elegance at Hampton Court Palace, or a presenter at the London Concours. I'm also an established concours judge and well known for my association with Bentley, having worked for the company since 1974, most recently as the Director of Royal and VIP Relations, Head of the Heritage Collection and Brand Ambassador until I retired in 2017. Now, you probably know Bill Warner best as the founder of the Amelia Island Concours d'Elegance 25 years ago, but Bill has spent his entire working life around cars. He started the parts department of a Florida car dealership, acting as gopher for the dealership's race team at weekends. This began a love affair with motor racing, and he was soon spending his spare time as a photographer, with his work appearing in many leading magazines, particularly Road and Track. He also collects, restores and races, and has judged at many leading concours. Andy Reid's first car, bought at age 15, was a 1968 Fiat 124 Coupe. His second, obtained by spending his college savings fund, was a 1966 Ferrari 330 GT2+2. Since then, he's owned more than 150 cars, as well as numerous classic motorcycles and scooters. A veteran of film, television, advertising, and helping to launch internet-based companies, Andy writes for several publications and is the market analyst for Magneto magazine. He's an expert on European sports and luxury cars and a respected concours judge. He's also chairman of the Isolation Island Concours. Car mad as a child and a Pebble Beach class judge and field coordinator for more than 25 years, Gordon McCall is now the co-founder and motorsports director for the world-renowned The Quail, a motorsports gathering. And I know what a great job he does. And of course, the Quail, a motorcycle gathering as well, and host of the Peninsula Classics annual Best of the Best Award. He's also the man behind the McCall's Motorworks Revival, the exclusive evening party at the Monterey Jet Center that kicks off the Monterey Car Week. Well, that's every year apart from this year, of course, which came from his opening up of his own restoration shop to visitors in the 1990s. So, gentlemen, you're all very welcome. Delighted to have you here talking about the Isolation Island Concours. Now, we've got a good lineup of cars. I've had a look through. I mean, this is a new world to me, I have to say, but it's opened my eyes to this brave new world. Now, Andy, you're the founder of Isolation Island and run it alongside Dirk de Jager. So first of all, explain to those who are unfamiliar with it, what is the Isolation Island Concours?
Thank you, Richard. The Isolation Island Concours is exactly that. It's a concours for model cars judged by full-size car concours judges from Amelia, Pebble, Villa d'Este, and the like. So that, in a nutshell, that's what it is. It's limited to certain scales, and it's limited to a price cap of $350. And the reason we did that is because you can spend $10,000 on a model car, and we didn't want the person with the biggest wallet to win. Okay. So we're all about inclusiveness.
Got it. And that's, well, that,
One, doesn't it?
Say again, Bill?
It sounds like Formula One, doesn't
it? I'm not sure $350 will get you far in Formula One, but Bill, come to you, because you're as is Gordon, you're an advisor to Isolation Island, and I believe the name itself was your idea. I guess that's unsurprising, perhaps, for the founder of the Amelia Island.
I don't remember. I think Andy had a lot to do with that. We just, he called me one afternoon and we were talking about what was going on with the virus and the quarantine, and somehow or other that evolved, but I will defer to Andy on his.
Well, I think he gives you the credit. So, and you know, maybe you shouldn't argue with him. He is the boss, of course, in this particular case.
Okay.
But Gordon, you're also an advisor, which is astonishing. But you've got a wealth of knowledge on the subject, because I understand you've got a bit of a collection yourself, haven't you?
Thank you, Richard. You know, I do. I do want to show off Andy's taste here in swag. So Andy produced a wonderful Pit Pass lanyard judges judge's lanyard for all of us to wear. So I notice, there we go. Okay, everybody's got to wave the flag here, right?
Now, hang on. Bill's looking for his, but hold that up again, Andy, because yours says something different on it to Gordon's. Look at that chairman, that says.
Chairman, what do you know? There you go.
Oh, Bill wanted, yeah, okay. Well, I'm sorry, I can't, match that. So you'll have to just let me be a visitor.
An hour official.
Send you one of these.
Okay, can I be that? Thank you.
Yes.
I don't mind being a VIP, even if only for the next 30 minutes or so, but thank you.
I think it'll
And a lapel pin to match.
Yeah.
And a lapel pin. But, Andy, tell us a bit more about it. So how do you enter Isolation Island, and how long is it going to run for?
That's a really good question. When Bill and I first discussed this, we thought it would run for a couple months, maybe a couple rounds, maybe a couple weeks. And now it's in round 7. It closes on Sunday with no end in sight, as it were. The way you enter is you go to Facebook, if you have a Facebook account and you need one, and you type in Isolation Island Concours, and our Concours comes up. You go on the page, you read the rules, which tell you exactly what to do, as Gordon knows, as Bill knows. You follow the rules, you find your class, and you enter the car in your class. And we have 11 classes right now, plus we have an honored collector class. And Gordon is indeed our first honored collector, because he was involved, and he has like you mentioned or alluded to, he has a somewhat vast collection of these automobiles in small scale size.
Yeah, I wasn't going to mention the number. I've heard a fairly large number. He may wish to volunteer how many he's got, but maybe we should just ask you how many are valued at $350 or less, do you think?
You're asking me that question?
I'm asking you that question, yeah.
And my wife is where? So, yeah, so, I've been collecting. It's really funny. This whole Isolation Concours concept, Andy just nailed it from the very first second. Here we were all sitting around with nothing to do. Everything was getting canceled day after day after day. More long-range cancellations were coming into play. And, Richard, I think you'd agree. I know Bill and Andy would. This is something that I guarantee you, there isn't a car person out there, and a lot of non-car people for that matter, that don't have a model of some kind in their household. Whether it's one or a few thousand, it's a common thing. And, often is the case, if it's a non-car person, it's perhaps a car that they always wished they'd had. And so, they picked up a model of it and they've had it on their desk for 30 years. In other cases, it's actually, the real one is in the garage, or 2 or 3 or whatever you might have. So it's a very common thing that I think Andy has brought out to the forefront. It's just not uncommon at all. We go visit, fellow collectors. You go into their home, it's like, oh my God, they've got a whole room full of 1/43rd scale models. It's not unusual at all. And I suppose I'm saying that in my own defense, because it is something that tends to grow. But the fact that Andy has found a way to shine a light on it, and really make it into something, I think it's making us all feel not so much like we're just a bunch of little kids playing with cars, that this is legitimate. My gosh, there's a car show now related to this. So,
well, now we're doing it virtually, but Bill, can you see a potential for maybe a real life concours of scale models after the restrictions are lifted, or does that already exist?
To be honest with you, no, I don't see that. I think. There's the fact is, if someone owns a particular car, let's take one for example, the Phantom Corsair. Any number of people can buy a model of a Phantom Corsair. In fact, I have the 1/18 scale one, fabulous car. But you really want to see the real car. I don't see. I see this as something that we're doing during the coronavirus, and it's a lot of fun. And I salute Andy for coming up with the idea. But I think when people have time to get out and go away and start kicking tires on real cars, the importance of what we're doing now will be a bit less.
Without a doubt.
Agreed.
So you don't see a room set aside at the Ritz-Carlton or the Inn of Spanish Bay, guys, with a mini concourse of mini cars then?
I don't see it. Maybe I don't have the vision. I've got a garage full. I guess I'm a closet collector. I guess I got about 2,000 models.
It's a big closet then, your closet collection.
That's in the garage. A whole wall of a 6-car garage is nothing but models.
Well, it's interesting, Andy, that you said there's a ceiling to the value of these things, but is there a vibrant market for buying and selling these cars?
Oh my goodness, ask Gordon McCall. Most definitely. There's a first sale market, then there's a resale market. One of the things we've come up with is a lot of our people bought these things new, and people will say, well, that's over the price limit. Well, when they bought it new, it was $285, and now it's $1,500 for exactly the same thing. Especially those BMW art cars, right, Gordon? Some of those ones that BMW Group Classic did were very inexpensive and now are very valuable. And it's weird.
It's an interesting point, Andy. And Richard, if you stroll through Retromobile, like I know you do,
Yeah.
It's amazing the amount of model vendors, and I would say concentration-wise, that is the best group of literally one-off modelers. These guys that literally live somewhere in a little cabin off in the hillside in Italy somewhere, and that's what they do. They'll make 5 of 212 Ferrari, or they'll make 3 of these or that. So it's very much like the auction world. The limited production models, not the Hot Wheels, not the Corgi toys, but the limited production handmade models. They have an assigned value when you commission a modeler to make one for you that you pay. And then over time, when you find out that they only built 3 of those, and it's very similar to the real car world, the other 2 are unaccounted for, all of a sudden, you've got something that's, and believe me, that is not a reason why any of us are into this. I know a lot of car guys will say that about their cars, but I can honestly say no one buys a model thinking it's going to be worth more later. Believe me, that's not the goal here. So a little different view in that respect. But Retromobile is a great example. Quite frankly, I think it'd be really interesting if Retromobile designated a little area within that massive hall of getting the vendors together and having a little concours.
But you're right. There is. Go on, Bill. Sorry.
I said that's where it would work at a place like Retromobile, because I don't know what the percentage is, but probably, what would you say, 20 to 25% of the booths in there are nothing but models.
Easy.
And some things you see in 1/43rd scale, you don't even know how they physically built it.
Yeah.
I kick myself every now and then. I think about, I had a chance to buy a Conti 312P at Hershey, and it was like $3,000, and $3,000 to me at that time was sizable. Still is sizable to me for a model. But yeah, to this day, I wish I'd bought it.
Yeah.
But you're right, and the people who are there at Retromobile marketing, their knowledge is astonishing. They obviously it's their business, so you'd expect that, but their knowledge is astonishing. When you hear, I've listened in on conversations, I've never been brave enough to start one, but when you listen into these guys, but also, Gordon, when we do the Quail Rally, I mean, we go to the Embassy Suites each year before Pebble, and there's some great purveyors of model cars there as well.
Absolutely. And to your point, Richard, there isn't a car collector out there that doesn't have models in their office, in their home, wherever. They've got models.
Yeah.
Now we're talking about them, so we brought them out of the closet.
It's obviously worked, yeah. I mean, looking at, so we're going to go in to look at some of the cars that are entered, the models that are entered into the Concours virtual isolation concourse in a minute. But it's interesting that some of these, I mean, oh, hey, here you go. Look at Bill's.
I had to get one quickly off the shelf because most of them are at home.
Look at that.
Fantastic. Well, one of the most interesting thing, Richard, is one of our judges actually is a judge and a real person and a race car driver and a car as well. It's the only person I know of that can claim to fame. And that's old David Hobbs here, who is a die-cast car for the movie Cars. And he's actually one of our judges in the racing class with Bill Warner. So there's David. Hi, David. He's kind of here virtually with us.
With that lovely mid-Atlantic accent as well, hey? I was going to say, you know, when thankfully I'm not a judge, when the judges come to try and pick a winner, you know, obviously they're looking for a great model, but does the history of the model count as well? Reading some of the descriptions, we'll look at the cars in a minute. There's a lovely backstory to these models as much as there is real cars as well.
Without question. I mean, Gordon and Bill can talk to this more because I only picked one award, but what I've seen, one of the most interesting things about the whole Concours, the cars are neat, the way they're displayed is neat, but the stories people have in connection with these cars is astounding. Like one of our cars that we're judging is one of the Le Mans Dodge Vipers. And the Dodge Viper, he was on the team at Le Mans with that Viper. And he has the little car too. And one of the pictures I think is him with his credentials from Le Mans that year with the
Yeah.
car as well. And there's a lot of stories. Or I saw this car race in 1972. Or, you know, you hear, and I really, really loved it. And so I have the die cast of it. Or I took pictures of it as a photographer in 1980, and I wanted to have photographs of it. So it's really interesting.
I mean, I'll start at the beginning because this is an interesting car itself. I remember seeing the real thing some time ago, but you know, this is you know, tell me about this, guys. Have you seen the model? I mean, you may have seen the car. I don't know.
When I was about, I'd say 12 or 14 years old, that car came to town. It was painted gold at the time, and a guy would, it was kind of a funny story. I think the guy was hauling around town to town and charging a quarter or 50 cents or something to go in the trailer and look at it. And then I lost track of it. Of course, the Peterson has the car now and did the restoration. It's not a car that's beloved by the Rolls-Royce people. But
I'd heard that. I'd heard that. Should I ask why, or is that not a good question to ask?
you know, it's kind of funny. You'd have to go back to someone who, Gordon would probably be able to tell you, at Pebble Beach, they did not want it judged in the Rolls-Royce class.
Right.
Dick Messer was representing the car at that time, and the Rolls people just feel it's some sort of an aberration. I think it looks like the car that Cruella de Vil's boyfriend would drive.
Exactly.
Now, Gordon, did we have this at the Quail one time, didn't we?
You know, we did. We've got a wonderful partnership with the Peterson Museum. You know, it's funny, Richard, when you go to the Peterson Museum, the car is in the vault display at the moment. This car makes the underground garage at the Peterson look small. I mean, the scale of this car is it's cartoon-like. And I think, Bill, to your point, I think that has a little something to do with why the Rolls-Royce Owners Club and a group of judges just view the car as like you said, a bit of an aberration. You know, that it didn't leave any Rolls-Royce plant looking like this, you know, or any design house looking like this. And so they've just had an issue with it. But as a model and as a talking point and as a museum piece, I think it gets the job done. You know, this Rolls-Royce probably has more people talking about Rolls-Royces than a proper Rolls-Royce.
I personally like it because of its bizarre nature.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's you know, it's a one-off. Now here's a car we know quite well as well, this is a model of a car we know quite well as well. Andy, tell us about this. I mean, I know this, we know this. It's one Pebble. It won the Concours of Elegance at Hampton Court, the real car, that is.
Yep.
What about this model?
What's interesting too is it's an entry by Bruce McCaw, the big collector Bruce McCaw, McCaw Brothers.
Who owns the car?
Yeah, and exactly. And he's done that a couple times. And initially he was like sneaking around, and but then he was outing himself and saying, "Hey, it's Bruce McCaw entering the toy car concours," which kind of shows what to me, I was like, wow, we've got Bruce McCaw in it. And then we had John Shirley in it. Then we had Peter Gleason in it. And we're like, wow, these are like serious heavy hitters in the concours world that are entering our little toy concours. But you know, this was all about the story. And because the pictures are only okay, you can see the depth of field. The problem with photographing these sometimes is depth of field is an issue when you shoot close. Ask Gordon, he knows all about it. And so as does Bill, because macro photography and depth of field are mutually exclusive things. But the story and the whole deal with the car and the connection with the car with the owner is really what made it. And every one of us had seen on the Concours judging field had seen this car in real life, and it's a pretty darn nice replica of that real car.
Yeah, I mean, the car. I mean, Gordon knows this because he's the front man for the best of the best. This is qualified twice in 2 years in succession, Gordon.
Absolutely. It's stunning. Just everything about it is stunning. And, you know, here's a great example of somebody who owns the real thing and then has a model of it somewhere in their house. You know, this is,
there's the real thing.
There's the real thing right there. And, you know, getting back to Andy's point regarding photography, Andy mentioned earlier, so he's got this featured collector category, and I'm trying to wrestle up, 20 selections from my grouping of cars, and I'm shooting them all with an iPhone. And the reason why is for simplicity's sake. It's in your phone. You can go on Facebook and just take the pictures and post it right to Facebook. We've had some pretty incredible, and I think Dirk Dieger would agree, we've had some pretty incredible photography that's clearly real 35 millimeter cameras or better, taking pictures of these cars and getting that depth of field right. You can hardly tell they're a model.
Yeah, it's kind of funny. That car was at Amelia when it was owned by the Indy Museum, and it was all in white.
Yeah.
And when I saw it at Pebble Beach, I hardly recognized the car, and I personally felt it had been tarted up. And then I read the history, and that, in fact, is the way it looked when it was new. The color and the polished hood, or as you would say, bonnet. If I had to go back and say which do I prefer, all in white wasn't bad, but this is pretty striking.
But this, as you know, well, we know the owner, and he is particularly keen on getting his cars to be as close to or bang on the original condition as possible. So that's why he would do that.
I talked to the restorer, and they did a great deal of that was Steve Babinski. They did a lot of homework on that color to make sure they had it absolutely on target.
Just goes to show they had tarts in 1928 also.
Well, let's move on to 1937.
Oh, Gordon can't talk about this one.
Uh-oh.
It's his wife's entry.
So this was my wife's entry.
Well, what a lady of taste then, I would say, don't you think?
Yeah, this was literally, Molly just turned loose, and that's the car she came up with. Andy, at that time, this was round one, correct, Andy?
Yeah, this is round one, first round.
Round one, and Andy said, we're a little light on pre-war, and so I sent Molly on a hunt. That is, by the way, shot on the roof of a 72 Z28 Camaro. Is that silver color you see in the background?
She obviously has good taste.
Fun little car, not the prettiest 8C ever built, but that car has a lot of history, and it's I've got a bunch of Mille Miglia cars, cabinets full of them. That's the one she picked. So, and Andy was kind enough to have that as chairman's choice.
Well, there you go. It's a great looking thing, but that's the thing, when you have more than one car to offer, it's which one do you choose, and you just go with the heart, I guess, with the gut. Yeah. Now here's a model of a very rare motor car. It looks like a pretty good model as well.
Wow. And yeah, how about the photography?
Yeah, I was thinking that when you were talking about it earlier. The photography on this is pretty stunning.
Yeah, from this level up, it just gets worse and worse as far as quality. It gets much more impressive as you go. Like when we get to Peter Singoff's CSL, it's just astounding. Sometimes we see these and go, "Oh, come on, it's a real car," because the detail, the models is so good, and the photography is so good, and the setting is so good that we're just kind of dumbfounded that it's not real. And this is, and they put it in such a location that you don't know if it's on a countertop or on pavement or what have you. So,
and that car, so that being the ex-Tom Perkins car that Ralph Lauren currently owns, the gentleman that was counseling Ralph Lauren on what to buy when he was first getting interested in cars, and give me 2 seconds here, this does tie back to models, was a dear friend of mine, a gentleman named Ned Tannen, who passed away a few years ago. Ned was president of Paramount Pictures and quite the movie industry guy. Ned was the guy that sat down with Ralph. Ralph basically said, "Look, I don't have a budget I'm working with. What cars should I go after?" This, of course, being one of them, which looked a little different when Tom Perkins owned it. When it went through the restoration, it had a little creative license taken for cosmetics. But Ned and I traded 1/43rd scale models for 30 years. This is another thing that's kind of an interesting backstory about the model. The interest in model cars is the idea that adult people trade them amongst each other as, for one, what do you give the guy that's got everything? In this case, I viewed Ned as a guy that had everything and, whatever. But a little model could absolutely buckle his knees, and we did this for 30 years. And so This car being one of them, not this actual car, but the 1/43rd scale model that I've got. Anyway, it's that story, and Andy mentioned earlier. There's that backstory, and it's a little heartwarming in cases, you know, of the real life story behind the models. So
it is. It's fascinating, and we'll keep going through, but we'll come to that car or the photography of that car you were talking about.
Stunning.
I think we're going to jump a car just to, I think was this the photography, Andy, you were talking about?
Oh, that's another one. That's one of our other photographers.
Okay.
He's astounding. And if you look at if you scroll through these, it's just amazing that I maintain this is all he does is photograph little cars because it's just astounding. He's playing all kinds of, he's using every trick in the book for depth of field, for how to mount things. He's using Photoshop expertly to erase stands or backgrounds or what have you. He's doing using layers to give him a long depth of field on those cars.
Oh,
he's doing
very cool.
different layers to do it. He's taking the body off, shooting the body off, then putting the body on, and then doing a layer in Photoshop to show you both the translucent look. But no one's doing this for him. He's doing it himself.
Amazing.
This is a punctuation mark on the amount of idle time during the coronavirus shutdown.
Gordon, you hit on something earlier that struck me. Is some of us are closet collectors. If our non-car people know that we do this, they think that we may not have outgrown our childhood, which I have to admit I haven't. But you know, when you think about some of the great model collectors and builders like Chuck Jordan, Vice President of General Motors, he had a huge collection.
Yeah.
And,
I know. You know, I had my neighbor in our new motorsport park is COO of Ford Motor Company. He built me a model of a car that I owned during the shutdown. When he's keeping Ford on the rails, you know, and building ventilators in the beginning, et cetera, he built a model. I mean, but you know, Bill, to your point, this is behind the scenes kind of intangible that takes place with these cars, and this is just wonderful. This 356.
I love this. I love this. Again, you know, like with the big car, it's the backstory that's an important part of the provenance of the model, I guess, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, look at this. This is crazy.
We come back to what we talked about. Is there value in these? I had a very good friend of mine who had probably the largest collection of model Porsches in the world. And one day we went to lunch and he was really down. I said, "What's wrong?" He says, "Well, the doctor told him he had about 8 months to live." He says, "I got to get rid of all this stuff." So I called Gene Perrell, who used to write the model car article for Road and Track. And I said, this guy's got limited time and he's got this fabulous collection of several thousand model Porsches. And the sad part was, because he was on a time constraint, the only guy that bought it was Hank Hammer, if you remember him. He bought a house next to his house in Hawaii to hold his model car collection. And they bought it for like 15 cents on the dollar. It was sad. But I think if you have good quality and you have time, yes, they're investments. Boy, you get down to a situation like my friend, and you've got 9 months to divest, the fun is in the collecting and may not be in the collection.
And certainly not in the disposing of.
Yeah.
Totally agree. Although I have to admit, it's probably a lot easier for those left behind to deal with a model car collection than it is a massive real car collection.
Yeah, you're probably right on that.
Indeed, truly. Having done that for people, yes, most definitely.
I don't know if you've seen it, but a lot of the auction houses, the legitimate auction houses like RM and Mecum are now doing, during this coronavirus thing, the selling of collectibles.
Yep.
Take a look at this one.
It's astonishing.
Yeah, I mean, it's just off the chart.
Yeah, you were talking earlier about the art models that BMW put out, and there's a perfect example.
Yeah, and I was there when he bought this. People are like, "Oh, that's $1,000 now." I'm like, "I was there when he bought it. I have one too. We know what we paid." But yeah, Peter is a unbelievable full-size car collector as well. A photographer and collector actually. And he used every single thing he would use in doing a real car shoot for his model car shoot, and they're just astounding levels of detail. Every time. Pardon?
How about those hand-lettered Dunlops?
How about those hand laps?
Amazing, amazing. I mean, the car's astonishing, but as you say, I mean, at a glance, you'd say this is the real thing, wouldn't you?
Yeah,
Yeah.
we've had a couple like that.
Yeah, it's amazing. Really amazing.
Is that Peter Gleason?
No, that's Peter Singoff. The photographer did that. Peter Gleason's
okay.
the M1, the Pro Car M1 on the
Yeah.
99 BMW.
That's this one.
Yes. And that one's pretty, Peter did a pretty good job for a business guy. I like that he put it on asphalt because it really hides what it is.
You really worked on that angle too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he used to have the real one, but he got another one that replaced it. Was it the Peter Gregg? What? No, was it? What was the? I think it was.
Yeah, Peter Gregg. That was an interesting car. Peter Gregg, being Mercedes and Porsche dealer, he did a deal with BMW to go IMSA racing with him, and in return he got the franchise for BMW. And he was very close to Frank Stella, so he contracted with Stella to do a car in tribute to Ronnie Peterson, which had the Stella at that time was in his quadrifoil days of artwork, and he did the M1 with the Stella paint job on it. And then after Peter died, they tried to sell the car as a Frank Stella design, and then there was a lawsuit that evolved in that Stella said, I did not paint the car, I just did the design, and he made a cardboard version of the design where he signed, and it went to court. And I don't know if there was a gag order put on it or what, but quietly he did sign the spoiler, I think, on the car, and it went on to another collector. The guy bought the car for lots of money, tried to get out of it by donating it to the New York Museum of Modern Art. Then it got damaged in a flood. It had a sad life, but if you ever want a bunch of pictures of it, I shot it. But BMW never considered it an art car because they didn't do it. It was a Peter Gregg deal.
Yeah, that's Peter Gleason's car now.
We did a couple more to look at, but Andy, what about this? Again, what a story.
This is a crazy story, isn't it, Richard?
Let's just have a look at this first, which is the car in action, the real car. I mean, you know, astonishing. And I'm just reading that you know all the stuff about this, you guys, but reading about this, obviously we know that the somewhat accentuated rear spoiler is there to give the vortex for the cyclist. But that gold bar underneath where it says Christine Laura on the back there, that's a rolling bar. So if the cyclist touched the bar, it would go round. So he's not interrupting the motion of his front tire, which I guess is a good thing if you're doing nearly 100 miles an hour or whatever he was doing.
118, and the rear wheel locked up, and he didn't crash the bike.
Well, I mean, it's pretty astonishing. Well, let's look at the model.
Current record, by the way, is held by a gal. She won 170 something.
Oh.
Yeah.
So we even have the bike here. I like this.
Yeah.
He hand built it on a Hot Wheel, actually, and we don't have a Hot Wheels class, and we don't usually let 164s in. And I said, can you make an exception for me for a 164? I said, what do you got? He sent me his little package of things. I said, oh yes, for someone who takes the time to build this out of a 164 diecast, you get the pass. So, because this is amazingly well built. This is tiny. I mean, this is that big, right? I mean, it's a tiny little thing, and it's just astounding that he did this work. I mean, I'm looking at I've got a little 911 here. I'm amazed just to do the work on this 911 to put that spoiler on and blend it that nicely. I mean, geez, call Paul Russell.
Quite a bit younger than the rest. So this is 2013. Again, stunning photography.
And Jim who submitted this car was on the team, which is pretty neat. And that's why he's got the car, because he was on the team. And all Jim's cars, except for his Corvair he entered last time, are cars he crewed on. So all different Le Mans or Daytona cars he crewed on.
A well done model.
Yeah.
Look at this. Yeah.
Lovely. Another lovely job of photography. He said his first entry wasn't so good, and so he kind of went back to school on it and learned how to up his game. And it just gets better and better.
Here you go.
Look at that.
Here's your tags. Here's your access tag for Le Mans 2013. Fantastic.
Yep. which is pretty neat. And again, he's done a really lovely job of the angles. And these are small things. You have to really get, Bill knows, he shot one for round one as well. And these aren't easy to photograph.
Well, there you go, guys. I'm going to come back off the screen share so I can see you all again rather than thumbnail. What a fantastic conversation. Thank you very much for taking part. I think it's going to be a tough job for the judges. They're going to be judged in a couple of days' time, and this will go up on the website in a couple of days as well. So it'll be interesting because, as you know, it's not just what the judges decide. There is a people's vote as well. So anybody can go online, excuse me, and cast their own vote. And if you've been following any of the results coming through, sometimes the people's vote goes with the judges, sometimes it doesn't, which makes it more interesting. So I'm going to stop recording in just a second. So before I do that, just to say thanks a lot, guys. Thanks for taking part from all over